previous Sunday, I was explaining what is dialectical materialism. And it is, some people attributed dialectical materialism to Hegel. Hegel, in fact, didn't use the term dialectical materialism.
Content over everything!
He used the word thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. That was his way of closing all the argument about the evolutionary process of humanity. So what's happened is when the thinking process developed side by side with the exploitation of the working class, a number of philosophers tried to explain what is the nature of the economic system of capitalism. But the only philosopher who made the most of effort to uncover the most vulnerable points of capitalism was Karl Marx, because his concern was that the capitalist system is anti-human, is anti-people, anti-working class, is a system that enslaves and indoctrinates, manipulates, abuses, misuse the working class. That was his statement. So he was not talking that much about what is socialism, what is communism. He was mostly concerned to explain what is the working class in correspondence to capitalism. When he used the word dialectical materialism, he implied that to understand capitalism, you have to understand the material conditions that capitalism creates. Material condition, because society depends on the majority of people making a living and surviving and having a future through their proletarian children. So, materialism itself is nothing else than understanding the economic structure of exploitation and the interlink between the system of production of capitalism and the working class. Jesus, that cry is so loud. And as nobody listening, look, it's a nuisance. No one listening. Anyway.
Well, that loud voice means that God is not really with them.
No, it's not on his side.
If they had a powerful God behind them, they wouldn't have to shout.
Yeah, exactly.
It makes common sense, doesn't it? You know.
And in any
God
case,
himself, in fact, would communicate.
I hope you caught the idea of what is materialism. You caught the idea. Now I tell you what is dialectic. Because you can figure out the contradiction within a society, but mostly according to the development of a certain economic system that he labeled capitalism. So, what are the developments? If the working class is at the receiving end of a guy that owns the means of production and can move those means of production wherever around the planet where it's cheaper to buy labor, then he has not even a second thought of moving his capital somewhere else where he can make higher profits. So basically, what Karl Marx was putting the emphasis on was why is the capitalist system strictly existing through the motive of profit. No other motive moves capital around the world, can make people employed or unemployed, can create human disasters, disaster zones. So he was trying to figure out this relationship, and he called it dialectical through the evolutionary process of change, everlasting change within the economic system of capitalism. What's happening now in Yellow Vest in France, in Belgium, in Germany, it is a movement that is not regulated by leadership. It's not regulated by some kind of organization. Of course, there are red flags. Of course, there are right-wingers. But the only stronghold of the Yellow Vest is this. Remember, it's very important. They say the communists, the socialists, unite the working class. They are movement whereby the stronghold is nothing but alliances, intercommunication alliances. While you, on the contrary, of course you have right-wingers there. Right-wingers look for all kind of enemies. They are very skillful. I'm talking about the Yellow Vest in France, the movement of the Yellow Vests. So what's happened, the stronghold, if you want to call it like that, I would say the weakness of the right-wingers is strictly because they look for enemies. Sexism, racism, bashing of China, bashing of other countries, all kind of discrimination, ethnic minority hatred, immigrants hatred, Islamophobia. They are all right-wing pathologies.
And division, dividing.
White supremacy, another major pathology that makes a society a very sick society. So you can see the difference when they tell me, come in the meeting and say, oh no, communism, fascism is the same thing. Can you imagine the ignorance? They are opposite. The communists look for friends, alliances, uniting the working class. The right-wingers look for enemies. The main enemy they are very fond of is communism. They also have racism, but communism is their biggest enemy. Why? Because they are quite aware of their weakness. To look for enemies is a major weakness. In life, you have to look for friends, for allies, for other people. We don't live in isolation. We live in a world community of interchange, exchange. We cannot avoid outer entities. So therefore, what is happening now in France, the Yellow Vest rebellion, is true that it's a spontaneous rebellion, but remember one thing, people only learn revolution by doing revolution. If you don't do revolution, you never know how to carry it out and how to manage it. Of course, they don't want Macron, but what they don't want, the media tells you they don't want the oil price high, they don't want cuts in social services, they don't want Macron. In fact, they don't want capitalism. That's what they don't want. It's not Macron, it's not the oil price, it's not the social services cut. They do not want capitalism, because capitalism will always produce Merkel, Macron, Theresa May, a very low standard politicians, linked to the rich, to the powerful, against the majority of the world population, which is made of working class.
So how did the majority win against the elites?
Revolution, there is no other way. France at last has understood. France, they should start removing the spider web from the guillotine, sharpen the guillotine, That's the only thing that works. Powerful people only understand violence. They do not understand some kind of dialogue.
Don't go to France with them. Go there with them.
Yeah, I go. Don't worry, I go.
If you go, we follow you.
Yeah, why do you want to send me there?
But why you are
Are my words so hurtful to your ears that you want me to send there? You are a coward. That's why. You can't stand the truth. You are the typical coward that cannot stand the truth.
come with us, fight, we go all fight. You go first, there, and after we follow you.
Yeah, so we send all the Islamic people to Mecca, Medina. We send all the Catholic to Rome. We send all the fascists to United States of America. Look how stupid you are. And we send people all around the world because maybe he's too weak, he's too scared that there is the voice of truth all of a sudden. His speaker's gonna. Shame on you. Shame on you. Any questions apart this poor baby, very scared of my words?
I don't believe that violence can solve it. You can all go, you can all try to revolt and riot and all these type of things, but it won't solve it. Not long term. It's very short term.
Life is more made of 2 billion years. The humans have been 2 billion years on Earth. We didn't come just now. We progressed. We have a bit of social services, whatever breadcrumbs the rich give to the poor. After 2 million years of class struggle, and he wants to solve everything in one day. 2 million years of class struggle. You don't solve things in one day, but in one day you can grow intellectually.
In your
Start
lifetime, have you seen
thinking.
change?
What?
In your lifetime, have you seen change?
Yeah, I saw a lot of change.
What has changed? Why are we still standing here if there's change?
Well, when I was born, there were a lot of poor people, gypsies, poor people living in dire poverty like in the slums of Calcutta. That's what I saw. Little by little, through continuous trade unionism, class struggle, fight, confrontation, learning politics, understanding the dynamic of capitalism.
You got many rights from the ruling
Well,
class.
it was a continuous class struggle. Now we have a decent standard of life expectancy. We live much longer. We are not as homeless. We are not as malnourished. So there were improvements. Now the contradiction is a bipolar world of a first world like us, fairly not really comfortable, but okay. And a third world of starving multitudes. Third world of starving multitudes in the global south where the majority of the world population exists, where there is the majority of the world population. I know India, I know Africa, I've seen these countries, these continents, so I can tell the difference. It was only 50, 60 years ago, we were not much better off than what you see in starving India or Africa. We were in those shoes, but we went to strike. And all transist movement continuously. Very strong trade unionism. That's how we gained a bit better standards of living comparatively to the world. But obviously, if you go to Peckham, you still see lots of people sleeping in the streets. You see a lot of homeless people. It's insane.
They're everywhere.
It's insane. Yeah, Peckham is the worst. Brixton also. You know, but comparatively, I mean, just 30 years ago was worse than now. I'm talking about comparison. So, what you say, that things remain the same because there's nothing we can do.
No, I asked you, have you seen change in your life?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. You know, I saw change. I saw change. It was much worse just 30 years ago was worse.
But the point is, whether you succeed or not, if somebody oppresses you, you always want to defend your rights, don't you?
Right, yeah.
Right to the death, maybe, you know. So that is the idea. We got to
It's a normal reaction.
keep our rights.
Workers of the world, unite!
But they always rule. That's why they
Nothing to lose, but you're changing.
He's one of the 38 million people in Poland.
no matter what you do, you fight and you fight and you fight, but they're always on top. Always. Throughout history.
Why do they rule? Why do they rule? Why do they in that position?
That is something that I can't answer you, my friend. If I had the answer,
Well, can I give you the answer? Excuse me.
And everything
I'll
like
tell
that.
you the answer. Sorry, Mr.
Can I give you the answer?
I give my answer and you give.
Yeah.
The
Who is
answer
the speaker?
We put
He
them
is the speaker, you are not the speaker.
because we work with a cheap money, less money, and they
I think you
give
should
the
get a
rest
ladder
to
and you
them,
Right,
and they are powerful.
right.
If we
But
say, look,
the vast majority is always going to go along with that kind of ideology, working, paying taxes, all this kind of thing.
So
The reason being is because of fear.
okay, would you
The
like
poor,
to be?
the poor person in the street is you could say it's like, how can I say? It's like a symbolism or demonstration of what it's like if you do not find a job. So a lot of people are afraid of that. So that is why they end up working.
Yeah, I understand.
So the system has you in a way where they literally got you by the balls. Where if you try to revolt against the system, okay, we take away this from you. So the
Okay,
vast
can I
majority-
give the answer now? I give you the answer.
Yeah.
The answer is simple. With power of the rich, the most organized rich people in the world.
Fail.
Excuse me.
Okay.
Excuse me. Hey, hello. I'm giving the answer. Power is in relation to weakness. So
Power is
no,
in relation to weakness.
no moaning and groaning against the rich, against the structure of society. The fault lies within us. Within us that do not know how to deal with the contradiction. See, if you do not join political parties, trade unions, all the progressive organizations, you will be always at the receiving end of those in power. That's
Be
what
alone,
is.
in other words.
That is what is weakness. Weakness. Power in relation to weakness of those that refuse to look at reality and take action. By yourself you can do bugger all. But you can use trade unions, you can use join political parties that are progressive, pro-working class.
But ain't all
pro-
those organizations controlled by the elites?
No, because they are, first of all, the progressive organization means against hatred, against racism, against Islamophobia, against feminism, you know,
I understand,
against
but they can
anti-feminism.
be infiltrated, that's the problem.
Well, you have always infiltrations in every political party. The world has progressed thanks to brave people that have faced the difficulty and the danger of being killed. Nonetheless, their conscience was clean, strong, and they decided that they have to do something about it.
Right, but it sounds like you want the majority to take over, but it's always been the minority that's ruled.
Well,
so how could the
it
majority
doesn't
take
need
over
to
the
be the
minority?
minority.
Sorry?
The minority is powerless in front of 99% people.
But they hold the power.
99%.
They hold the power, the minority holds the
They hold the power because the people are weak. They don't
But
understand
why,
their power.
Why are the people?
Because they don't understand that they have power.
So how are they going to discover that they have power?
Just stop, like they do in France, stop working. Riot,
But it's
demonstration.
hard to convince masses to stop working.
Well,
Because only a small majority is going to do it.
a revolution is like Revolution is like like wildfire. Once a sparkle goes, then is a chain reaction of people that say enough, it's enough.
There was some study that said, like,
How do you stop people from dying in the war?
But people die. People, of course, die in the war because look at the police in France. They can throw
I've seen made demonstrations
rubber
of this over
bullets.
the years.
They were
But
illegal.
long term, it
They
doesn't
should be
stand up.
illegal. They are very dangerous.
strong in
They can use water cannon. They can use all
It
kinds
might
of
work for, a year, 2, 6 months, whatever it is, but how long
No.
can we
They can.
continue down that path? So there has to be a next action.
So what do you say, like you see, like, pessimistic, so like, so what's like, what do you say, like,
Come a bit
No, I'm
closer.
saying lay down this taking, but we have
Come
to
a bit
understand the
closer,
reason
so
why we're
because
in this
there is a
situation.
film.
And we have to grab
Can you
hold
come
of
a
our
bit
own
closer
mental
because
faculties. We have to grab hold of our own mental faculties in order to take back the power first and foremost. A lot of us are not even in control of our own thoughts. Furthermore, being able to create a revolution. You know,
Yeah, but
a lot of people have habits like not being able to stop smoking cigarettes, drinking, eating meat, so on and so forth. You know what I mean? Be able to harness your own power first and foremost
Yeah, but the
before you can
power-
revolt in masses.
You are not aware of the power of the working class. If the working class stops working,
Yeah.
then the whole country is paralyzed.
But the working class is not going to stop working because they don't want to lose their Mercedes-Benz, their BMW, and their 4-bedroom or 5-bedroom house.
That is
And their children in private
you
school
have
or
the-
maybe public school.
you say this and stuff anyway.
When you have children, it's a different perspective you have. You cannot afford to say, okay, I'm going to stop working. How am I going to feed my children?
The working class is made also of people who don't have children.
Well, I know that.
You know what were
I'm
the
talking
most
from the perspective of people that have
which
children.
were the
There's
most
quite a few people who do have
successful demonstration and the most successful strikes throughout history. Do you know who were the most successful?
Tell me.
When the working class stopped working, there were those who had children were the first to go back to work. There was a chunk, quite a significant chunk of the working class that kept resisting the 2-3 years of strikes, you know, in the meeting, for especially the meat producing industry. That is the most profitable industry. And you know, those that didn't go back to work and kept on picket line, day in, day out, 24 hours a day, the peasants. And if you look at all revolution, French Revolution, Russian Revolution, Chinese Revolution,
The peasants.
Cuban Revolution, peasants.
Okay.
You know why? I tell you why the peasants.
You got nothing to lose.
Because the peasants all have a handkerchief of land, 2 goats, 1 hen, and they survive the famine of not working for such a long time.
Right.
While the workers, the city workers, unlike Karl Marx said it would be, revolution would be from industrial workers. They cannot, because they starve to death. The peasant, because it doesn't starve to death, carries on with the strike, on and on, day on and on.
Right.
There
But he's
is
used
a
to it.
strike, very interesting strike. Minnesota.
Yeah.
The Hormel factory, meat producing Hormel factory, feeding all the fast food, especially Burger King, McDonald's, producing all the fast food, meat for fast food industries. They stopped working. For 1 year, the workers could survive because they had the solidarity of the shops giving them free food. After that, the shops were also collapsing because they couldn't keep on feeding these workers. So the only people that kept on staying on strike were the peasants because they had a little garden and something to live, to eat. That's it. If you don't have anything to eat, you give up. So at the end of the 3-year strike, the company had to give concession. Higher wages, better for example, medical insurance that the company did not have. They had to give free medical insurance, and all kind of free facility, gym and all those amenities that makes people more healthy, more educated, better libraries, political libraries, lectures of Karl Marx. That's how it became a success. And now Minnesota, because it's the place where they produce all the meat, they process all the meat, is one of the richest states, thanks to the working class action. But when you go into strike...
So you say that Marxism was a beneficial factor behind that whole movement?
No,
Marxism.
Marx said that the revolution comes from industrial working class. So far, all the revolution have been carried out by peasants, by community of peasants that were surviving even without working. They could still survive. They were working in the factory, obviously. They had children, so they wanted a better life for their children. But they could eat. That is the main urge, eat.
So how can industrial workers overcome their failures? You know what I mean?
The worker.
How can industrial workers overcome their failures in having successful revolutions?
Well, the industrial workers, the only thing industrial workers can do is to go through the ballot box and try to support the most left-wing leader they can find.
That's all we can do today.
Well, Corbyn is the most leftist communist leader that the Labour Party ever had. Why all of a sudden such a leftist goes and becomes the chairman and the boss of the Labour Party? Have you ever asked that? Because people are sick and tired of this system. They are sick and tired of bankers, of all kind of corporation, all kind of robberies. Financialization, why was implemented financialization all of a sudden? Because financialization is the most secure way to enslave the working class. How? Promising that one bedroom in some suburb and with little rent, trying to compromise with the working class. I will give you one bedroom council flat, but you have to obey the rules and regulations. This is what people found betrayed because they made so-called prime mortgages. Prime mortgages is when the bank lends you the money, but you don't really have the possibility of maintaining your job because capitalism is such that your boss puts the factory there and tomorrow he finds that some Timbuktu countries have much cheap labor. They move the factory there and that guy will never be able to pay the mortgage. So prime mortgage, so-called prime mortgage, was created simply on the assumption that that worker would maintain the possibility of earning a wages that for the next 30 years he would pay back his mortgage. That collapsed, that's why there was the housing bubble that collapsed. And then you had this so-called movement in the United States and of people that were desperate because they couldn't pay their mortgage. Their flats or houses were repossessed. And all of a sudden, when the working class starts understanding that there is no light at the end of the tunnel, because financialization is modern day slavery, is the same as IMF, is the same as World Bank. Those are all forms of enslavement of the majority of the world population. When they understand that, finally, they decide that, we had enough, we must put into power a Labour Party, that is more left-wing and will provide for the most
left-wing? What is left-wing when they all operate the same capitalist system?
That's
Every
right.
left-wing government No left-wing government has ever stopped money lending or banks, or not even nationalised the banks. So what is left-wing?
Well,
A plane has two wings, still connected to the plane, left and right.
Yeah.
yeah, left wing is when there is a trade unionism that is
Trade
supported-
unions are separate from the Labour Party.
Well,
I know the Labour Party grew out of the trade unions, but they're separate organisations.
well, doesn't matter. The union, the left wing or whatever socialist parties, they always look for alliances. When you look for
What
alliances,
is left-wing? Define what is left-wing. What,
Yeah,
what
that's
does it
a good
mean?
wing
please.
is politics of alliance.
Well, that-
Right wing is policies of enmity.
The right-wingers have alliances.
Right wing look for enemies.
they
Left
don't.
wing wants alliances. That's what it is.
It's not true.
Well, that is your opinion.
Right-wingers have alliances. Left-wingers have enemies.
No, they don't look for enemies. Right wingers look for enemies. Islamophobia, racism, bashing of minorities, bashing of homosexuals. That is all what the right wing craves. Enemies. They want enemies. That is the typical mentality of divide and rule, because they always hope that the next Mussolini, the next Hitler comes to power and will wipe off the weak, the most insecure, the poorest, the most destitute.
But if you say that being a lefty is better than being a right winger,
No,
why
I'm
is it?
not saying it's better.
So what are you
I'm
saying?
I am saying that this is the reality. It's called the dialectical materialism. Dialectical materialism, you analyze the condition of what is happening, is going on in society, and you apply that reality of what is happening in society at a certain given moment of history, and you, after analyzing, you see what are the dynamics that move people forward to better living condition, to better housing, better
And
schooling.
politics hasn't done that.
Well, actually, if you look at the social health service, all housing, were always policies of the left for
It's all
the
temperamental.
working class.
Stanley Baldwin built 1 million homes in the 1930s when the Conservatives were in power. So what you're saying is not correct.
So what, you give me an example?
Yeah.
I'm saying, in general, the left was always for programs and reform that would ameliorate the condition of the working class.
Maybe until about 1979, but after 1979, no way.
Well, that's why I was saying that the reason why we have become weak as working class, as a majority of people at the receiving end of the policy of the rich, is due to the fact that we are sucking the teats of the people. We are living on the recipient of the colonialism and imperialism that is going to Africa. Look at France, for example. France, it's true they have some kind of
Non-political
progressive movement.
It
It's
is
still
progressive.
It
Because
is
they're not left
progressive.
or right wing.
Right,
Well,
They see through the charade that you still think is real.
right.
well, in any case, I'm just saying that when there is a situation whereby a country lives off of the France, for example, is exploiting and making 14 countries in Africa paying high taxes to France. What do they do there?
what reason?
They have their troops in 14 countries. Because it's the weakness of the Africans. The Africans are like you.
You mean
the
like me?
Africans, I know Africa mentality.
What do you mean that? Hold
I know
on a
African
minute. What do you mean
mentality.
the Africans are like me?
Well,
You know me.
I tell you what you said before, and now I tell you.
All the African
what
countries
is
got
the-
independence, starting
I
with
think-
Ghana in
wait a
1962.
Right, thank you.
And 50
What kind
years of independence.
When they have to keep on paying taxes to the capitalist, imperialist gangsters. That's not independence.
You just showed your true colours
It's a
when you said
false
that they like me.
Now
showed
I
your
tell
true
you what's
colours.
happening in Africa. I
think the
tell
same
you,
as...
I tell you what's happening
No,
in
no,
Africa.
but you should have to clarify that for her. She should be able to clarify that for herself, being an intellectual.
I tell you what's happening in Africa, okay? You go to Africa, virtually...
Have you been to Africa?
Yeah.
And where have you been?
I am the friend of the Defense Ministry of
I'm saying, where have you been? Not friend.
French Guinea, North Africa,
Where in North Africa?
Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, Congo. I know the mentality.
You know the mentality?
Is this, that everybody craves
That's a
to
statement
imitate
of gross
the
exaggeration.
European.
Like millions
The
of people
European.
have that singular
Bullshit, not everybody does.
Not
everybody does, that's
you
bullshit.
Look in the shops.
I've
You
been to
see
Ghana, that's bullshit.
The craving of the...
My friend from Ghana, who is an older man, he's about 65, 70, he said to me the British Empire did a lot of good for his country when he was a young boy, and he listened to what his father said. And the idea, and this is a man who's a friend of mine, who is my age, a bit older, and he said the British Empire did a lot of good for Ghana in the 1950s and the 1940s. Now, he's not lying.
Well, what I'm saying is
Good as
this.
well as bad.
If you have a little patience, because I know you are impatient.
No, I'm
You
not
have a
impatient.
little patience is this, that they want to imitate in Africa, they want to imitate European lifestyle. They have this mentality of upper scale mobility to bourgeois show off. Rolex, jeans, Adidas, Nike.
These are what you call the elites in that country that can do such things. Not the average citizen.
That's right. It's not
Of
the
course,
general
the
public.
average cannot afford it.
So what
Yes,
are you
they
talking
can.
about?
There is a...
The elites always going to be the elites. They always have that
I'm
mindset.
not talking about the elite. This is the middle class of Africa. They want to imitate Europeans.
It's not imitation, they just want what other people have got. It's not imitating.
Wouldn't you like to have a comfortable home?
Wouldn't you
Wouldn't
like
to
a
drive
car, a big house?
Exactly.
Calm down.
It's not
They
imitating.
want to have the amenities of the first world, even if they can't afford it. And that is a major weakness.
What do you mean if they can't afford? I think you're talking about your
Africa has
bottom at the
unfortunately had some of the most corrupt leaders
Right.
politically.
What
It has.
is
Yeah.
the weakness? When you want to go upscale mobility through showing a certain attire, a certain watch, it means that you are not politicized. You are just caught
But this
in
is
the
not the
rat-
average
let me
person you're
finish.
talking about.
Let me finish. You just caught in the rat race of being better than the next man, better off or more presentable than the next man, and this is the weakness of Africa. If
That's rubbish.
Africans
That's rubbish.
would
I don't
unite-
agree with you on that. That's rubbish. That's
what-
rubbish because you are talking about a minority. That's not the majority.
It doesn't matter.
The
That
majority of Africans are
majority
hard-working
is the one
people,
that
and you see
puts-
them in the street. If you've been to
that
Africa,
minority
you
is
see
the
them in the
one-
street.
That minority is the one that puts in power all the right wing
But they
laptop.
They
and
are the
boot-
ones.
and
They
boot-
are the ones that's
and
being
boot-
controlled. They are
and
brainwashed
boot
and mind
lickers.
controlled.
Don't talk over me, please.
Not you.
They
You're not listening to what
are
I'm saying.
the boot
I'm saying the
lickers.
ones you are talking about.
Can I
They're the
finish?
ones being educated in this country,
Can
in
I
America.
finish? Why do
to-
you get so angry?
I'm not getting angry. There's
You
no
don't-
anger.
You can stand the truth.
There's no anger.
This
You're angry.
is not a minority. These are very dangerous bootlickers of Washington, London, Bonn, or Paris. These are very dangerous people. These are the people that keep Africa under the heels of imperialism, colonialism, exploitation,
powerful, that's
subjugation, abuse. These are very dangerous people. They are a majority, even if it's
They're
a
the majority.
small it's a small number.
What are
but
you on about?
because they are dangerous, they can
I
be
think, see,
considered
this
a
is how I
majority.
know, as an intellectual, this is how I know that you're upset, because you're making critical errors with your speech right now. There's no need for it. So it's something
Oh,
inside
you
of
make
you
critical errors.
that is rotten
You
and
cannot
not right.
understand. You cannot understand how weakness is and how
I understand
it
weakness.
denigrates a whole continent of Africa, because the weakness of wanting to present yourself the next man. It's like a dog fight. A dog fight. It's like a dog fight.
See, the
When
words that you
you-
use, you're describing Africans that they're savages.
Yeah.
It's like a dogfight. That's how I know something's rotten inside of you.
No, dogfight is to imply a society that instead of creating cohesive action against imperialism, colonialism, exploitation...
I went to Ghana, there was no dog fights. I didn't even see one fight or disagreement in
Can
the
I
street.
finish?
Did not Mugabe
You
become a
just don't
colonialist?
know. You don't have the nerves to listen to what I'm saying.
Because there's
The
something
dog
rotten
fight-
inside of you. You have an agenda.
No, I don't have
It's
an
evident to
agenda.
see right now.
I am presenting
Since
the
this gentleman brought
witness.
some questions to
You
you,
are talking about...
The gender came out.
You are talking about a personal view of the reality in Africa.
You're just
I am
waffling. You're not
talking-
saying any facts.
I am talking... Well,
You are, you're
want
just
your
waffling.
fact, talk to your God. He will give you the
I don't give me that rubbish.
Where's that
You're
coming
just
from now?
waffling.
You
State
have
some facts.
No nerves. That is the weakness of the working class. No nerves to listen and
No, this is
try
Speaker's
to
Corner,
I'm
not
saying the weakness of the
understand.
working class. You're pointing at this gentleman. What's all that about?
I'm just saying, in Africa, I know that the
She used to do up her
weakness,
shoelaces. She's going to trip up.
the major weakness of Africa is trying to go into upscale mobility without understanding that Africa will always be at the receiving end of colonialism, imperialism, until
You
they
sound like a colonist.
unite. They have
You
to
sound like a
unite.
colonist.
Always a colonized country.
Right.
Africa did have some impressive empires in its lands.
Yeah, that
do know
was
that.
many years
Not
ago.
colonialist
I'm
empires,
talking
African
about
empires.
this present moment. At this present moment,
I think you have a
Africa
hatred for
is-
Africa.
No, not really. I
I
go
thi-
there
I think
regularly.
you have a hatred.
I go to Africa
Okay, it's starting to come
regularly.
out.
So how
Because the
can
way
you...
she's speaking, she's talking like the majority of Africans
Because
I
you're
said
black, you
it.
need to say you
We-
want to
I-
defend
it's
Africa.
not
European
true.
society.
Just because you're
Like they don't have their own traditions, they don't have their own belief systems. She doesn't know
According to
anything about
Basil
Africa.
Davidson,
Africa,
let me tell
in
you
one
this.
country alone,
According to
they
Basil
got so many different
Davidson, in the
dialects.
14th
She
century,
doesn't know Africa.
West Africa was more economically and socially advanced than Europe.
You have
Basil
to ask
Davidson.
yourself. You have to ask yourself why.
I know you're not
now,
listening.
As that is at the receiving end of imperialism.
You know, who doesn't
and
want to have a nice
colonialism?
house? Who doesn't want to drive a car? You know,
Why?
you want the
It doesn't
basics,
happen.
you know?
It doesn't
wanna be
happen just for
comfortable.
no
How can you
reason.
blame people
There
for
is a
wanting
precise
that?
reason
Exactly.
it happens.
It's ridiculous.
That's what we all want.
Exactly.
We have loads and we all still want more.
That's right.
Yeah.
How
No,
can you
no.
blame
You walk in
people?
bare
How
I'm
feet.
can
not
you call it
talking
awareness?
about the money
Right.
gathering and collecting money.
Stability and
I'm
comfort.
You don't want too
talking
much
about
security.
state.
Everybody wants to be bourgeois. That's the
State
bottom
has
line.
nothing
We all have our bourgeois
least
lifestyles,
bourgeois,
whether it's going on holiday to Spain
Yeah.
or in the bookies,
If I come
or
from
driving
Africa,
your
I see
car.
people driving
Yeah,
cars
but
living in
everybody
Africa.
everywhere.
I went
Ask
to a country, I
me
want to say.
answer me this question. Your bourgeois lifestyle does create England. You are a unit here all your life.
Most of it.
Does create England such a weak country that is at the receiving end of Russia or of the United States, because those are the two major powers? Does create England a weak
Economically, this
country?
economically, this country produces 5 times more than Russia.
So-
Economically, so
You are
it's
saying
not based on the size of
that
the land.
you have a lifestyle that comparatively
I'm done here, man.
is far better than the lifestyle of whatever Banana Republic, Global South, whatever you want to call it. So
I don't recognise these statistics that you're saying, because you're not really, you're just saying platitudes, Banana Republic. What does it mean?
saying that you live
Why is it in every country in the so-called third world, the populations are increasing? So it shows the standard of living is getting better, slowly, and maybe not quickly enough, but the populations are living longer, so the infrastructure is getting better, and has been for many years.
Which country have an increasing population?
All of them, even the poorest, whether it's Bolivia, Rwanda, Bangladesh, whichever poor country, Mongolia, they still have increasing population.
I don't agree.
The most basic fundamental
I
of
don't-
any measurement.
I don't
The
agree.
people are living longer, there's
Can
more
I
babies
answer?
being born
Can I
who are
answer?
surviving and growing up.
Can I answer?
Yeah.
The fact that the world population is increasing is linked to
Economics.
food production.
Yeah.
Not so much to industry. You
Industry,
know,
food production is
food
an industry.
production. Well, industry in the sense of
Farms are factories without roofs.
The increasing population is always linked to enough food for survival. But that doesn't mean a thing.
I think honestly you mean well, but you're living in statistics that existed in the 1960s and the 1970s when the technology was so different. It takes 4 days for a strawberry in Chile to arrive on a shelf in Sainsbury's. 4 days. They pick the strawberry, it goes into a chiller, it goes into a container, goes to a port, and it's in Tilbury and in Sainsbury's on the 4th day. And that is universal probably in virtually many countries now in terms of food production.
It's so efficient.
That's why we're all so fat.
If your capitalist system is so efficient,
well, it is in that way.
Why do we still have a big chunk of the population that is poor, destitute, and has to live off the breadcrumbs from the rich?
I went to Mexico some years ago and I saw poor people. I was quite surprised.
Go to Peckham, go to Brixton, you see a lot of poor people sleeping in the street. So
handfuls of drug addicts and alcoholics.
You assume that because they're homeless, automatically you assume that they are drug addicts and alcoholics. When there is any kind of rich gangster that is also alcoholic and drug addict,
but they could be on the street in 6 months.
Then that's okay.
Some people just haven't
Churchill used to be an alcoholic. He used to go in Parliament
He was
drunk.
almost an alcoholic.
Went to the Parliament drunk, but it was okay. If you saw a poor guy sleeping in the street, you don't even question a second, you automatically is an alcoholic and a drug addict.
I spoke to a young man.
You are very prejudiced.
No, I'm not.
You are prejudiced because you assume that if somebody.
Well, I've asked them. I spoke to a young man 6 months ago in Clapham Common who told me he'd been kicked out of his home because he was smoking drugs. And I have no sympathy for. If I was a father, I wouldn't want my children smoking rubbish. I'd say you stop it or you get out. There are limits.
I can give you 20,000 one example to understand reality, to understand society. You have to look about trends, about developments, about what is coming next, not about one example here and there. You know, you have the habit of analyzing reality on bits and pieces. Reality should be analyzed as collectivity. Why all of a sudden Corbyn becomes the leader, the most leftist leader of the Labour Party? Why? You should ask about trends.
Because a lot of Marxists joined because they could all join for £1 and they all voted for the furthest left candidate that they could. That's the only reason.
No, it's a lie. What you say is a lie. Nobody was paid to work for Corbyn. Nobody was paid to work.
No, I've said a membership increased by a couple of 100,000. All these radicals joined because they could join for £1 and they were allowed to vote.
What do you mean radical?
A Marxist. Communists joined the Labour Party before Jeremy Corbyn got in. That's why you got about half a million odd members now.
Thank you, well I do.
So if you're not a Tory, you're a radical. You know what I mean?
I didn't say that. No. I said a lot of people joined radical leftists by their own. I mean, they would call themselves that. Momentum describes itself as a radical leftist group. Trotskyists joined. I mean, you can go and listen to them speak. They admitted what they did, and they moved the party to the radical left. So these weren't the same people that supported Blair and the moderates. These were new people that entered into the party and shifted left. That's the only reason Corbyn got in.
Yeah, but Corbyn like
very
his old
noisy.
Labour. I mean, didn't want
It was very noisy.
There's new Labour. That's what old Labour.
Old as in 1983, yeah. So you have to go back.
Come take over everything from your melody.
Come, man, say it straight. Man, don't listen to BBC. Man, don't listen to ITV. Listen.
Your voice is fake. I can recognise you on the
What's this organisation? When I do my this is content on what is it though? A YouTube channel. It's a YouTube channel. Oh, YouTube. Oh, right.
Now you're on YouTube now.
I'm on YouTube. This guy's the man of the speaking school.
You support Donald Trump? The number one. He's not in our country, so.
Yeah, it doesn't really